Hi, I'm Colin,
And I'm Bert.
and you're watching Dabbing with Washington Artists. The idea is simple 6 questions
And 6 dabs.
as we interview artists that make Washington, Washington. So sit back,
Light those torches.
because this is Dabbing with Washington Artists.
Hi guys and gals, it's Anthony Pardi. Yes, my last name really is Pardi. And we just had one. No, thanks you guys so much for inviting me on the show. I had a great time today. I'm stoned, as you can tell. We just did 6 dabs of, I don't remember, I'm not gonna grab the cue card, but there's a cue card right over there. So watch the episode so you know what the dabs were. There was like some tut, I'm too stoned to remember. Anyway, I have a new album out. It's called Bad Made Beautiful. You can literally just go to Linktree/Anthony Pardi, and that will find you. That's a proper way to say something, right? Will find you all of my links. There you will find all of my links, including the collector's edition of the album, my YouTube channel, which there'll be some unreleased footage from today that we're about to film on my YouTube channel, etc. So mad love, thank you. Cannabis saves lives. Pot related, it is not debated. And this has been Dabbing with Washington Artists.
For today's series of dabs, we have a chocolate trip, a ninja nectar, and a Skittles to begin the episode, and we will finish our smoke session with a King Tut, a Chernobyl, and an Afghan Kush.
All right, so just want to say first off, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks
We
for
look forward to seeing what you have to say with the interview.
Awesome. So for dab number 1 today, we've got Chocolate Trip.
Chocolate Trip is a hard-to-find indica-dominant strain that hits like a sativa. The initial wave of euphoria is offset by the tendency to leave smokers energetic and charged. We found this shatter at a shop in Everett on Route 99.
I love watching this thing work.
A little full?
A little
We
bit.
can fix that between the next take.
So the first question we like to ask everybody, what role does cannabis play in your creative process?
Couldn't be creative without it. Cannabis for me is recreational and medicinal. And I mean beyond that, it's a fuel, it's clothing, you can literally survive off of eating it. It's a food. Cannabis means a lot to me beyond just creative, but I have anxiety, depression, all that stuff. And so as a creative person, I struggle with actually outputting my creativity. I feel like kind of trapped a lot, like I got a lot of ideas and don't ever get them out. Cannabis breaks that barrier. It's like a mental lubricant, I guess, for me.
My favorite thing about this question is like we always get different answers,
Right.
but they're also similar in a lot of ways. It's like it's different for each person, but overall, it's like a lot of people use it medicinally. A lot of people use it, to help them get through something.
And it's just fun to smoke.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's one thing in the medical field and in the industry, I always try to remind people, like, don't get stuck on this concept of that using it recreationally is bad, because it's not. It's like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna do anything to go home and relax, a glass of wine is far more damaging. Listening to freaking violent music is probably far more damaging. But going home and smoking a joint is pretty much as innocent as you possibly could get it. So what's wrong with that, even if it is just for fun?
All right, so what do we have for dab number 2?
For number 2, we have another hybrid, Ninja Nectar. If you manage to catch and squeeze a ninja, this is essentially what happens when you get out of
Yeah,
it.
I don't think that.
There's nothing in here.
Ninja Nectar is a newer hybrid hailing from Washington State, with an amazing terpene profile reminiscent of Starburst candies that last long after smoking. This strain is sure to be a newfound favorite. We grabbed a gram of this sugar wax from a dispensary on Bothell Everett Highway.
All right, second question, another one we love to ask everybody. How has living in Washington affected your sound?
Ooh, that's a great question. I gotta answer this in a circular way. Let's talk about what is Washington sound first. I think that Washington is one of the most underrepresented places for music. I think that the contributions grunge had in the overall plethora that is rock and roll is understated and underrepresented and underrespected. I think that just the music history of the city itself is not even really well known. One of the things that I was born on the east side of the state, but I moved to Seattle from Montana. I was living in Montana when I came home, but I moved back to Washington and specifically to Seattle for music so that I could stop working day jobs and make tunes. And one of the biggest reasons was I wanted to perform on the same stages that Kurt Cobain once performed on. I wanted to perform where Ella Fitzgerald once performed. I wanted to perform, and people are like, Ella Fitzgerald performed in Seattle? I'm like, yes. We have an incredibly rich music history. And so how that affected my sound is I came home to Washington to sort of become a musician and immediately went from just a hip hop head and a fan of music in general, somebody who listens to 12 to 15 hours of music a day, no lie, to then becoming a student of it and studying it and reading books and watching documentaries and learning about what music really means. And very quickly realized that Quincy Jones lives right up the road, and like there's a lot. And so for me, it's like my schoolyard. It's essentially where, you know, there's this institution that I can go in and learn, and then there's this playground where I can play, and it's all in one place. And I think that if I was in LA or New York, you know, I could rap, I can produce, I can sing, I can play, you know, beats and stuff. So I could hold my own, but there's so much more there, and it's so much more diverse, and it's so much more, you know, people are into other stuff besides music, and it's mixed in. Whereas if you're a musician in Seattle, you're a musician. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's for me what it is it's like my schoolyard.
All right, what do we got next?
So for number 3, we have Skittles.
Skittles.
With a couple of Z's there.
I love Skittles.
Skittles is an indica-dominant hybrid that is known for its rich, sweet terpene profile of grapes and fruitiness and tendency to leave the smoker calm and focused for hours. We picked up a gram of these sugary diamonds at a shop in Linwood.
So, moving on to question 3, you've got a new album, Bad Made Beautiful, and we would love if you would tell us a little bit about it.
I got a new album. It's called Bad Made Beautiful. No, for real. The beautiful part about it is you can literally just Google that and you'll find it. Bad Made Beautiful. Let's talk about what that means. Bad Made Beautiful is a philosophy. It's, for me, a mantra. It actually came about probably halfway through the production of the album, which took us almost 4 years. Produced probably over 200 songs.
Oh wow.
Whittled it down to 17. Something that not a lot of artists do. You know, not a lot of people sit down for a project and spend more than a year or 2 years creating that much material. Usually it's like, if it's a long project, it's because studio sessions are few and far between. Whereas with Ron and I, we were recording 3 to 4 times a week for about 2 years solid, and then probably once or twice a week meeting to mix and master and go through final edits and figure out video ideas. And about halfway through that process, so about 2 years ago, I was going through a really rough time. Ron and I were talking, and there's a lot on the album that kind of came as a result of this. Conversations with Ron. He's a big brother to me. He's a mentor. And we were talking, and I was like, man, I just wish that I could turn all of this bad, can I curse? Is that?
Oh yeah.
All this bad shit, if I could turn all this negative stuff into positive stuff, you know, if I could only make bad beautiful. And he turned and he looked at me and he goes, there's another one, or something to that effect. It's not exactly what he said, but I remember it like, that's one of those things you say. And that's kind of how I have my art set up, is if you go on my Facebook, my Instagram, if you read the captions or the posts, even if you have conversations with me, and then listen to my music at a later time, if you are at all paying attention, or you're one of those people who gets deja vu a lot or has feelings like that and remembers things, it will be eerie how many things you hear me say more than once. People will have just a conversation with me and they'll be like, dude, didn't you say that in a song? Yeah, it's in June 11th, or yeah, that one's in Freedom, or you know, yeah, that's an old SoundCloud track I deleted. And part of that is because my music is just a journal. It's just me pouring out my thoughts and my feelings, how I look at the world, what I want for us as a society, as a species, as, you know, humans. That's what Bad Made Beautiful is. It was my idea of my hope for the future. If I could only turn everything in my life bad into beautiful. I was raised in a broken home. I have a crack addicted father that's absent. My mother wasn't able to raise me, so I was raised by my grandmother, who was abusive to both my mother, that generation, and then also me. So I come from a lot of bad, and if I could turn it into something beautiful and help people like me to live better lives, or to be more inspired, or be more creative, or just feel better about themselves, that's exactly what I want to do. That's what I want to do every morning when I wake up. Every morning that I'm gifted breath, I want to use that breath to breathe life into other people. So that's what it is like, it's this philosophy. And to be honest, I don't really care if the album ever makes it platinum, or if it ever gets on, some huge radio station or whatever. To me, I put it out to save my own ass. I put it out like again, it's like a journal entry. So it's just me pouring out like the last decade of like, what is happening? Where are we going? What is going on? How are we gonna get out of this? Capitalism is eating itself alive, and we're stuck in the beast's heart. We live in America, One of my other favorite shirts, I was gonna wear it today, is shout out to 99. He has a shirt for his clothing line that's America spelled with 3 Ks, and I've been spelling that word that way since I was probably 12 or 13, because I realized that's the country we live in. It's perfectly legal to have a Klan rally, but you have a Black Lives Matter rally, and then they gas you, what have you. And my daughter's mixed, and so like I've seen that exact dichotomy. I grew up in Eastern Washington. I went to school with Richard Butler's grandson. People Google it and you'll know what I'm talking about. There's like literal Nazis and literal Klansmen and literal gang members and drug dealers and pimps and prostitutes and everything all walking around, and then people want to sit there and play these games and like point fingers at each other and be like, you're the problem. It's like, no, you're the problem. It's like, no, we're all the problem. Like right now, as we're having this interview, they're sweeping Cal Anderson. Where are all those people gonna go? Yes, I agree, the park should be cleaned up so that we can all have a clean city. But you guys didn't give them garbage cans or places to live, which is why they're living in the park to begin with. And yet, how many empty buildings are there in Seattle?
Yeah. So many. There's an apartment crisis. Look at half of those apartments aren't filled.
My homie works at a Belltown apartment, a high rise, and he said that he gave a projection. He said, watch, next year you're gonna be able to get a 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle for $900. Right now, it's like $2,600.
Yeah, they're all going to start going government payout.
Yeah, and people are abandoning the city because they don't want to be here anymore, and Amazon's moving their operations to North Dakota, wherever they're going. There's a lot of change, and it's like, why not? It's so simple. It's so like the concept of food. There's an organization, it's not an organization, a movement called Food Not Lawns. Literally just the concept of that. There are over, 7, I don't know the numbers, 7 million acres or something like that of lawns in the United States, just grass. And most of it is non-native grass. So it's not even grass that's helping the biosphere of the ground and the soil that it's planted in. So you have all these properties with all these yards that could be producing food, and yet we say we have a food crisis. How? And then you go look at the waste, look at the trash compactors, go to a McDonald's and look in the waste bucket. There's like $500 worth of completely edible sandwiches, French fries, all kinds of stuff because it was the wrong order, or it sat on the hot plate for too long, or somebody didn't have their credit card right, or whatever. All that food could be repurposed. All of it could be allocated. There's somebody standing outside with a sign on the street, like 50 feet away, going, I'm hungry. Mm-hmm. But it's illegal to take the food out of the McDonald's and give it to the person on the street. Mm-hmm. Breaks my brain. Yeah. It really does. So that's what it is. That's the album.
Yeah, I was gonna say, circling back, quotes come to mind. I've always heard stuff like, depression is the greatest author, and art is suffering, and stuff like that. And you consider, people who are creative typically have some kind of past experience that helped build that. People who have very pleasant and comfortable lives, in my opinion, haven't really experienced the same kind of things, and they don't have as much to draw from.
Right.
So when I hear stuff like "Bad Made Beautiful," that's what I think of, is that struggle being turned into something.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught the vibe. That's what I was going for.
It's very, very deep.
Sweet.
Very, very deep.
Sweet. Yeah, it's been like that too. Got put out promo 2 years ago before the album. Before we had performed some of the songs. Like if you were local and you've been to a show, you've heard "Jump Around," you've heard June 11th. You've even heard like songs like "Smile" that didn't make the album. But I started putting the logo out and just the concept of like "Bad Made Beautiful." Take a life bad, turn it beautiful. And pretty much I've always gotten that response, is people are either like, "Oh, that's cool," or they're like, "Dude, that's cool," and like, I see what you're doing there, And I'm like, good, I'm going. because that's how it came to me. Just sort of. There's another one on the album, another sort of mantra that's respond, not react. And that was something Ron taught me. I was freaking out one day.
I actually really like that.
I
think that
fucking love that.
And he goes, he's like, I was like, man, why is everything always like this, bro? And he goes, because you keep reacting. And I go, what? And he goes, you keep reacting to the situation instead of responding to the situation. And I stopped, and I'm huge into words, and I thought about it for a second. I was like, I've ignored my entire adult life that the word respond and the word react are two different words and have different definitions.
Yeah,
I've ignored that fact my entire adult life, and it's caused me epic amounts of turmoil. And then I realized, and it just like flooded into my brain, and I was like, oh my God, that one time when that one person did that one thing and I responded, everything went great. Every other time that I've reacted, I got punched in the face, I lost $100, my dog died, like whatever. And I realized, oh my God, I've been reacting when I could have been responding, and I've been creating all this conflict for myself. Because I mean, it's like, a good example would be road rage. If somebody cuts you off, what happens if you react, you honk the horn, you flip him off, now he pulls out a gun, he wants to shoot you. If you respond by slowing down so that you don't get into a car accident, changing lanes, and then accelerating past him, what happens? You never see that guy again. He just stays mad in traffic by himself somewhere. Fuck that guy. You respond, your life continues. You react, you might not have a life. You know, people get shot in traffic over road rage all the time. So, and that's one I struggle with. When people do shit to me in traffic, I get really upset. I'm like, bro, especially if I'm like the passenger, which I usually am. I'm usually like in the passenger seat chilling. And I'm like, follow that guy. How dare he do that to us? You know, especially like my kids in the car or somebody does. But then it's, again, what am I supposed to do? There's a great video of that. There's this guy who's a concealed carry, and he's one of those dudes who really want to be cop, kind of gung-ho dude. And he like gets cut off or whatever, and the dude flips him off, and then it's this 20-minute long of him on the phone with 911 with his gun in his other hand, driving with his knee, with his daughter in the back who's crying, begging him to stop while he chases this guy around the city, like threatening to shoot him and shit. I'm like, dude, like that's the level of reaction that some people have, you know, as opposed to a response. So yeah, that's lots of mantras in the album.
Yeah. All right, what do we got next?
All right, so for number 4, we have King Tut.
King Tut is a sativa-dominant hybrid known for leaving the smokers social and chatty. Its pungent skunky smell is offset by its fruity and sour taste. We found this gem at a shop in Marysville.
That last one was a little bit, we're ramping him up. I think what he's doing is he's slowly increasing the amount of dabs. I think there's a conspiracy going on here. That's definitely what's going on.
In the song Steady, you refer to your place of privilege in society. In what ways do you feel like your music and your place of privilege affects positive change in your community?
You're talking about the bar, I seek to find enlightenment, so I quit my religion, my entitlement is white within the system, all this privilege I'm given. I mean, basically the following bar is an image of oppression that's systemic. And then I quote a statistic, 1 in 10 black men will end up seeing prison, women making less up in the workplace, which is also a statistical fact, that women make less in equivalent job positions. And I've seen that argument online. You'll argue with these idiot, misogynist, patriarchal dudes all day long about how that's not even true. But it is. You can go look it up. A great example is my partner. Again, she's a healthcare director, and because of the fact that she's an immigrant, she's an African woman, so obviously a black woman, and it's undeniable how much more skill as a 15-year working RN nurse that is a healthcare director, how much more skill she has than usually white men, but non-black, non-female, non-POC people in the same position, or even in administrative positions that are higher than hers, that get paid way more money to do way less work, and even in the position that they are, still rely on her to get what they have to do done. And it's like she's doing the jobs of 3 or 4 people and making less than the white dude who sits across the office from her, who does like just his job and has the same title, you know, or even a lesser title sometimes. Like she had an assistant once that made the same amount. What? That doesn't even make sense. The concept of the fact that the person is an assistant would mean that they work underneath your position. They work for you.
Right.
And she doesn't even like using the word underneath, which is why I put it in quotations. She says, my staff, my coworkers, my team, because she considers everybody that she works with to be a part of her team, largely because she's very dedicated to the patients and she does a lot for healthcare. So for her, it's about that, not the money, not the image. But then you have the businesses that, you know, it's about the money. It's capitalism. Like I said earlier, capitalism's eating itself alive. That's what we see in the Western world. But yeah, for me, growing up white and in a I was very lower class. Like we were poor. I grew up without running water for a few years, and like we didn't have power until I was like 7. You know, we had a generator and like did everything during the day. Had candle lights and oil lamps and shit. Like stuff that kids nowadays don't even experience unless they're in poverty. And so like I grew up in poverty, but I grew up in a lower middle class white family, and I had a lot of friends who, you know, either they had come from immigration, or they were Black American, or, you know, brown American, whatever, like Mexican, Latina, like even people from like Guatemala who had immigrated 5 generations ago. And all of those instances, the poverty was worse. It was more, I realized that like they didn't have the same resources I did. You know, even just like getting the ride to town to go to the food bank or whatever was a totally more accessible thing for me and my grandma than it was for like other people that I knew. Or even the fact that some of these kids didn't even have a grandma or parents to raise them. They were like wards of the state, you know, or whatever. And so at some point, it was right before 9/11, which really radicalized me, because before 9/11, I was still like pro-military and pro-police. I wanted to be a part of all that and save the world and be Captain America and all that shit. But I was questioning the place that I was born into, you know. And then like a lot of my friends growing up were adults, so some of them were like Vietnam veterans, and I had learned about the Gulf of Tonkin and how we lied to go into that war so we could make a bunch of money. Like there was no conflict, there was no reason for the United States to get involved. It was a war going on somewhere else, and we're like, let's get involved because that's what America does. And then, of course, at that time, there was a lot of anti-war sentiment because of LSD and weed and shit in the 70s. So people were like, we don't want to go to war, right? And the government's like, okay, well, we got to do something, so we'll lie and we'll say we were attacked. Then happened 9/11, and that changed my whole perspective. Then I was like, I'm not going to go over and fight for heroin and oil. I'm not going to go over and kill brown kids so that people in America can feel comfortable about 3,000 people that died or whatever. Like, I'm not going to do that. And at the same time, I also was like, look at the world that we're in, where people just blow up buildings, and like, who knows who did it? I mean, let's look at Tower 7, the fact that there was other buildings blown up, and like the Pentagon thing that we never solved. And even if it was people here who did it, people did it. People kill people, and they do it all the time. It's like a daily thing. People get their heads cut off and all sorts of terrible stuff, all in the name of like greed and power and like fear and all these terrible things. And for me, the epitome of that is white, male, American culture. Like Western culture is the epitome of oppression, because we live on stolen land that's covered in the blood of the genocide of like 100 million Native Americans. The indigenous people that used to live here are almost non-existent. Like there's literally very few of them left. And then I have to walk around every day and realize that I'm the dude who did that. I may not be the guy who's actively out here, whatever, shooting people, because it's not the fucking 1800s or the 1700s or the 1600s or the 1500s. Like, oh, whatever part in time you want to look at, and whatever inquisition or whatever conquest you want to talk about, I may not be the one who's doing that, but it's in my blood. I can trace my lineage back, and I'm related to early American presidents. I'm related to captains of ships and that people who ran trade routes and that sort of thing. So I'm directly descendant from people who were slave owners, who were genocidal military leaders. That's makes me sick. It makes me want to like, I mean, to be honest, it makes me want to like jump off of a bridge and be like, I don't deserve to be alive. Like, this is terrible. But You can't live your life that way. You can't be like, I'm a horrible person because I'm white and I'm a man and white men are fucking terrible, so I'm terrible. You can't live your life like that. So what do? Bad made beautiful, right? You be the example. You be that shining beacon that, you know, a lot of my women, female friends will come to me and say, I was raped, you know, something bad happened to me. It's a burden to be trusted and to be respected and to be a friend and to be a confidant and a comrade. It's a burden. But if you bear that burden, you feel righteous and you can actually help. You can be a hug, a crying shoulder, a $20 bill, shelter overnight, whatever. Whereas if you're not, and you represent oppression just because of the way you look and the way you are and what you have between your legs and all those things, which is not really fair, but that's the way the world works, then you don't even get the opportunity for that. You just have to realize, like, damn, the world's fucked up. People are suffering. 1 in 1 women is sexually assaulted. So every woman I know is being oppressed, and none of them even say anything to me about it because none of them trust me. It hurts. It sucks. So for me, that's what it is. It's like, I want to be a better person when I leave here than I was when I showed up. And then from that moment, like when I pick up my partner at work today, and then when I get home tonight and cook dinner, and then tomorrow morning when I wake up again, if I do, just continuously grow. One of my favorite things that Pac ever said was, life is an everlasting quest for knowledge.
Right.
And Pac was a great example because from the time he was a boy, he was just reading and learning. And despite the fact that he was raised in oppression and in poverty, his mom was in prison when she was pregnant, and he was like constantly, you know, he was the image of thug life, right? They tried to put rape charges on him and say he killed cops, and like they're just like constantly trying to dismantle this dude. And what was he always crying about? We gotta work together. We gotta stop this. Black and brown, white, everybody gets along. We all love each other. Stop it. Peace. Thug life, the hate you give little infants fucks everyone. What? And they're demonizing this dude. Why? Think about it. Because he's trying to unify. I was talking about America with 3 Ks. I spell community with capitalized unity because etymology is important. Words have root words for a reason. The community and the unity and the communication, camaraderie, right? Those words mean something. They're there together. Just like entertainment or television or any of those other words. They're that way for a reason. And it's like, which part are you focused on? Are you focused on the unity? Are you focused on communication? Are you focused on both? Whatever was in that last dab.
No, man, that was good. That was some fucking shit from the soul.
So for number 5, we have Chernobyl. It's, radioactive.
Chernobyl is an uplifting sativa-dominant strain known for leaving smokers in a haze while elevating moods, and is great for social events and gatherings. We grabbed a gram from a cute shop in Arlington on 177th Street.
Seems trippy. It like turns purple and blue. And
Right.
shit. I'm sitting there looking at the light like, what is going on?
Yeah, definitely been. That's pretty.
It is sweet. It's got like a sugarcane taste.
All right, so for question number 5, you have a song on the new album, Where I Wanna. Do you view this song as a continuation of the legal and cultural war against cannabis, or do you think it's more of a celebration of the legalization and the ability to legally smoke marijuana in Washington?
I love that question.
Thank you.
It's both. Where I Wanna was written for 3 main reasons. The first of which is pretty simple. I smoke a copious amount of weed, and yet don't really put weed music out very often. By no way am I comparable to a Wiz Khalifa or Snoop Dogg or somebody like that, who cannabis is attached to their brand in that much detail. However, as you can see with the stickers I gave you, and you'll hear me say slogans like pot related, it is not debated, which is why they call me the PR man, pot related. That again is kind of like Bad Made Beautiful, or Respond Not React. It's sort of a mantra, it's sort of a nod or a homage to cannabis, which is essentially something that saved my life. I'll put Cannabis Saves Lives as a hashtag in pretty much any post that I make about weed, because for me, until I think I was 15, just freshman year of high school, so a year early. So yeah, I would have been going on 15, like 14 and a half, 15. And never forget the kid, his name was Travis Watson. Dude was like 2 months younger than me, but 7 foot tall, just this enormous dude. And he came up to me. I went to an alternative high school because troubled youth are not always criminals. Sometimes they just don't like to listen, and that was me. I was too smart for the schools, and so they sent me to an alternative. I used to get in arguments with teachers all the time about factual inaccuracies and stuff like that in books and whatever. So I ended up in this school and was living with my biological mom at the time temporarily and hanging out with my little brother. Went to the school. Travis Watson asked me one day, he said, "You want to go smoke? You smoke?" I was like, "Nah, man, I don't smoke cigarettes. They're terrible for you." And he laughed. He's like, "No, man, not cigarettes. You smoke weed." And I was like, "Oh." And my grandma was anti-cannabis, and a lot of my family was like, "That's a drug. Your dad's a drug addict. Don't do drugs. You'll die." So I was like, "No, man, I don't smoke weed. That's bad." And he's like, "No, it's not. What are you talking about?" He's like, "My bad? Like, you like Jesse and Justin, the twins. Like, you like homegirl. What's the girl you think is cute? What's her name? Samantha, whatever." Yeah. What about Alicia? That was her name. Alicia. She had green eyes. Damn, trippy. So he's like, "She smokes weed. He's like, everybody smokes weed." And then I kind of realized, I was like, damn, a lot of people do smoke weed. Can't be that bad. Fuck it. Let me try it. So I walked to the park with this kid who I'd only been in the school for like 3 weeks. Smoke weed. And I'll never forget the first time I hit weed, because for me, it wasn't like, oh, this is so much fun, and like, let's go get a bottle of alcohol and have a party. For me, it was almost a spiritual experience. Like, as soon as I hit it, a lot of that anxiety, which had been created by him asking me to smoke weed, partially, because I'm like, it's a drug, and I've been programmed to be like freaked out about my life. When I hit the weed, I was calm. I was like, I can hear the wind, and there's birds, and the sun is fucking beautiful. And I was just like, whoa. Now that I've studied cannabinoids and the fact that every human being, every living creature has an endocannabinoid system, and taking in THC, Delta 8, Delta 9, all those cannabinoids interacts with your body in different ways depending on who you are and what you're smoking. And there's things that it does. It increases visual acuity. It increases audible acuity. It increases focus. Again, subjective. You might get lazy when you smoke weed and then not pay any attention to what you're doing. But if you try, you can. And that's what it was for me. It calmed me down. I went back to school and I was all worried. I'm like, oh, I'm stoned. I'm gonna get caught. Nah, man, I was acing tests. I'm like fucking hyper focused in reading class, flying through the pages. I'm already a speed reader, and I was just like, look up at the clock, like, holy shit, class is over? What the fuck? Write the report, done. It's supposed to be a weekend project, and I'm finished before I leave school. Weed literally saved my life. It allowed me to calm down and deal with my anxieties and my depression. Felt better about my home life. And it hasn't always been perfect. Like, the relationship with anything like that is not great. Again, there's cannabis toxicity. I've overdone it sometimes at parties. I've gotten sick off dabs and puked, or smoked a backwoods with the homies, which, no backwoods, right? and gotten sick or whatever. So, like, there's certain ways that you can, not that I like shouting the dude out or anything, but Russell Brand, one of my favorite quotes from him, as a recovering heroin addict, he says, you can turn anything into heroin. Coke, Pepsi, television, weed, coffee, Like, I had to go get a coffee before I came here. I had to go get one, because I get one like every day, or I drink coffee at home. I'm way more addicted to caffeine or sugar than
I've been trying to quit
Amen.
for like 3 years with no
terrible.
success.
It's terrible.
That's the worst.
But yeah, so it's like, I forget what the fuck we were talking about.
We were talking about the
Shit, I forgot
the song "Where I Wanna."
No, so where I Wanna was written first and foremost because I didn't have a weed song. I was like, I want a weed anthem. It was written second of all because, yes, I-502 passed. I was actually one of the first people to work in a legal I-502 business. Right after it passed, I was part of a collective. We did deliveries, which was still in the gray area back then and sort of stuff. And it was a beautiful experience. I kind of got screwed out. I'm not going to name names and stuff, but I kind of got screwed out of a whole bunch of money, which, again, as a collective, which is what we were supposed to be, was going to go to help animals and to help the community here in Seattle and prevent all this chaos that we see going on. And we're talking like we did I think we did $1 million in the first quarter in profit. So there was a lot of money on the table, and I was really about community and putting that money back into I-502 and to Seattle and to localized like animal shelters and stuff. Some of the other people that were a part of the collective, I don't think we're actually part of a collective, and we're more capitalist. And some of the legal end stuff wasn't tied up right, and I kind of got screwed out of it. As a result, I pushed away and just became an advocate. And I smoke. I don't deal with all that nonsense anymore. But as a result of I-502 passing, I was sort of in a celebratory mode. And then very quickly, I realized that just like any other law, I-502 was passed because it was profitable. And there's a lot of limitations, and there's a lot of things that were created as a result of it, and the drug war is in no way over for cannabis, even if they legalize it nationally, which they're probably gonna do within the next 5 years. It's still not gonna, there's still gonna be people getting arrested for weed and going to prison. There's still gonna be people in prison for weed. There's people in prison right now that have been there for 45 fucking years for like a joint and shit, like bad. But yeah, so for me, that's what where I want it is. Because if you listen to the song, I'm kind of being like braggadocious, and I'm talking about I'll smoke weed in your convenience store, I'll smoke weed in your police station, I'll smoke weed at court, I'll smoke weed in front of people who don't like weed, I'll smoke weed at your grandma's house, I'm gonna smoke weed where I wanna. And the reason I said that is because people smoke cigarettes pretty much wherever they want. We didn't pass an indoor smoking ban in this state until the 90s. They didn't pass a federal legislation to take cigarettes out of advertisements and out of television and movies so that kids wouldn't be encouraged to smoke cigarettes until I think it was the 90s. So, you know, one of my favorite Robin Williams moments is the opening scene to Mrs. Doubtfire, where the scene that he's supposed to be voice acting for is a cartoon bird being forced to smoke. So as protest, he quits his job by voicing over the cartoon and talking about, no, don't make me smoke, I get cancer and die. And the guy's like, and then he goes, come on, you guys, can't I get a vote? And it pans over to the fucking audio room, and all the audio techs are sitting there smoking. And they're all like, yeah. So it's, I mean, we were like a giant tobacco commercial for 50 years. So for me, if you can blow cigarette smoke in my face with my daughter right there, and you can drink legally and get wasted drunk and come harass me about the Seahawks and scream shit in my ear, or whatever you're doing, I should be able to smoke a joint wherever I want to, whenever I want to. I should be able to have any job that you can have. I should be able to make every dollar of money that you make. I should be able to live my life and parent my children and go visit my grandmother and go to my church and do whatever it is that I do without being discriminated against because of the fact that I enjoy a plant that has been on this earth long before humans were and has never harmed anyone. Like we talked about at the beginning, like nobody's ever died, nobody's ever overdosed, nobody's ever gotten hurt. And yet something like alcohol, something like caffeine, people have died of heart attacks as a result of drinking too much coffee. Coffee's not even considered to be a dangerous thing. Like that's not, you can drink as much coffee as you want. If you went to the store right now and ordered a 20-shot mocha, they're gonna look at you crazy, but they'll fill a fucking cup full of 20 shots of caffeine and give it to you. And imagine how many milligrams of caffeine that is. Imagine what that's doing to your heart. But people do it. I know people who get like 8-shot lattes twice a day. It's like, or drink 5 Red Bulls, or
Yeah.
you know, eat fucking 12 bags of gummy bears or whatever. It's like, dude, oh my gosh. I mean, I used to be like that. I weighed 280 in high school, and like my doctors were all like, dude, you're gonna get diabetes. Like, it's in your family. You have heart disease, you have diabetes, you have all this stuff. What's, you know, you complain about these things that you feel like you're sick, you feel something's wrong with you. This is what's wrong with you. You drink a 12 case of soda a day. You eat sugar like it's fucking air. Like, that's what's wrong with you. And then I realized, and I was like, oh, cool. And now I've been vegan for almost 7 years, I think, 6 or 7 years. And I feel great, you know, so it's like, but it was hard. I still struggle with sugar. You know, this maybe, I'm drinking this because it's weed, but it also has sugar in it, which is why it's like delicious and tasty. And my coffee has chocolate in it. I could have got a just regular coffee, but I got one with chocolate in it because I like sugar. It's hard, man. But yeah, where I want it is for that. It's like a protest song about how ridiculous it is that I have to protest against people talking shit about cannabis. Like, it's so ludicrous. And shout out to Johnny McEnroe, for those of you who don't know, former tennis pro, legend. He actually liked my post on Facebook, which was like the coolest accomplishment of my entire career. Because in the song I say, do what the fuck I want to do, like Johnny McEnroe. And another one of my great film inspirations is the scene in Mr. Deeds where he's throwing eggs and shit at the car with Johnny Mac, because that was kind of Johnny Mac's like whole persona. He was like, listen, I'm a tennis player, and I'm a dad, and I'm a dude, and I'm a guy, and I'm a dude, and I drink, and I smoke, and I do whatever I want to do. And that's what I'm gonna do. And if you're gonna sit there and try to run me through this like TMZ ringer of like paparazzi nonsense, whatever, you're gonna get me cursing and me being an asshole and me telling you to get the fuck out of my face, because that's what I'm gonna do. So that's kind of how I look at cannabis. Is like, people come up to me, I'm smoking weed, can you put that out? I'm like, what? Yeah, no, I'm gonna do what the fuck I wanna do.
All right, so this brings us to number 6.
Number 6, last one. So this is an Afghan Kush.
Afghan Kush is a classic indica dominant strain that is known for its powerful Kush taste and smell and tendencies to leave the smoker incapacitated. We found a gram at a shop in Capitol Hill.
Nice.
So this one's a bit to chew, and I actually love this question. We've already talked a bit today about a lot of the hang-ups that were put out by media companies and our government, for reasons why you shouldn't smoke marijuana.
Right.
The war against a harmless plant. People will absolutely remember, commercials like, I can't ever forget the commercial where it's like the kid who's sitting on it and he's flat as a fucking deflated cushion or whatever like that. We've been fed these lies,
Right.
obvious lies by government officials for as long as I can remember now about how harmful and dangerous marijuana is. And now that we're moving forward in the war and people are understanding more and more about it and we're legalizing, people are kind of leaning towards not trusting their government as much anymore.
Right.
So do you think that legalization played a role in progressive issues in Washington?
Yes, I think, to be honest with you, I think that cannabis this is a really, you're right, this is a lot to chew on. Cannabis is how do I say this? Cannabis is a bioregional part of Washington, and we could go for hours talking about this, but Google the word that I'm about to say. A lot of people will refer to the bioregion that Washington exists in as Cascadia. And so when you talk about Cascadia, which encompasses more than just Washington, now we're talking about up into Canada, parts of Idaho, essentially the Pacific Northwest is probably the common term you've heard describing our bioregion. But in this bioregion, we have some of the best cannabis grown in the entire world. And I will say that until my dying day. And I dare you, burner, fucking anybody, bring up any Cali strain that you want, and we can go drive out to Eastern Washington, and I will find you some old farmer who will put your dick in the dirt with his strain. Because, and this is why, we get everything that comes from Cali, we get everything that comes from Canada, and we get everything that comes from the East, all the way to fucking Afghanistan. Because anything that goes into New York, which is one of the harder places to import to, comes to Washington, and anything that comes into Washington, we ship it out to New York because it's really profitable to do it. It's $300 or $400 an ounce in New York right now. It used to be $600-700 an ounce in New York, where it's been $100 or $200 or $300 here. So it was always profitable. So as a result of the drug trade of cannabis, we were, the tunnel that used to do the BC bud. Again, you can look this up on, and there's tunnels into California from Mexico. So with where we are located, we have access to the best seeds, the best starts, the best flowers, the best concentrates, everything. We had wax. I saw wax when I was like a kid. Like, I remember concentrates back when people were doing it like hella dangerous illegally in their garage, blowing up their houses and shit, because concentrate's been around forever. People have been extracting cannabis for hundreds of years.
My dad was extracting cannabis in the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. Tinctures, all that stuff. And so Washington is heavy with their support of cannabis. And to answer your question, I know that inspires us geopolitically, because as a result, like I said earlier, everybody smokes. Lots of people smoke. I remember realizing after I started smoking that, like, oh, that stepdad, that's why he always had cologne on, and that dude that was my friend's dad, and that other guy, and the fucking mechanic, and all those people smoke weed. That's what that smell was. That's why their eyes were red. That's why they were acting shifty or whatever. All those dudes were stoned. Oh my God. And then wait, all my aunties were stoned, and grandma was smoking, and like everybody was stoned. Holy shit, there's hella people smoke weed. So I think that bioregionally, we have so much good quality endocannabinoid interactivity with the plant that as a result, it spills into our politics, and some of our leaders and a lot of our voters are high. And so what you get is people are like, that's why this is a liberal place, because people are stoned, and they were like, when asked the question of, will you pay an extra $3 a year in taxes so that this food bank can get an extra $1 million a year in federal government assistance so that they can feed these people who need some food? People are like, yeah, sure. Whereas in other places like Texas, they're fucking drinking and shooting guns in the air, and you ask them like, hey, can we get like $3 from you to feed some kids? And they're like, fuck that, bootstraps, like let them feed their own kids. My daughter was born in Texas. My mom lives down there in the South, and we moved down there to have the baby, and because it's cheaper, capitalism, right? But I couldn't stay. Like, I was down there for like 6 months. I had to come home to Washington because like weed was illegal, and the cops were all gung-ho to shoot black people, and my kid is mixed, and my partner at the time was black, and my partner now is black, and it's like, why would I put myself and my family in that position when I could live in Washington, where I was born, where it's peaceful and everybody's smoking weed? So I think it has a lot to do with the politics, even outside of us legalizing cannabis. But then I think when I-502 was finally passed, and we went from being one of the first states, I don't think we were the first, but we were the second.
Us in Colorado.
Yeah, and then if you go back to medical, it was the same way. We were one of the first states to pass medical, and we were one of the first states to decriminalize. So it's like, for decades, people have been less oppressed for smoking weed, which of course makes people peaceful and calmer and creative, and as a result, there's this huge music industry. This question ties into like everything we've been talking about, because essentially that's what it is like Washington State has a bunch of really good weed. A lot of people smoke or eat edibles or drink tinctures or whatever, so their cannabinoid system is more in line. They're better people, and you get better legislation and better leadership and better votership, and I mean, it's proven in the numbers. You get more participation with political ideology here. More people care, more people go out and help, more people volunteer. It's statistical fact, if you look at it. And then it's like, okay, so why? What is the factor? Well, if you were to really draw a conclusion, cannabis could be one of them. Another one could be entheogens or hallucinogens. We have a lot of mushroom production in this area. We have a lot of people, this is lesser numbers than cannabis, but we have a lot of people who experiment or self-medicate or recreationally use what I call entheogens, which sort of encompasses all hallucinogens. But yeah, like people who eat mushrooms or do acid or take Molly or what have you. And I think that as a result makes people calmer and more compassionate and more patient and more likely to respond as opposed to react, So I think it's like intrinsically linked. And actually, let me end this with this. I was gonna write, my path got changed partially because of cannabis, and I ended up making music and rapping and doing dab podcasts instead. But what I was originally gonna do was, I was gonna be a scientist. I was gonna be an anthropologist, or write a book, or save animals, travel and be a National Geographic photographer, or whatever. I used to work in the wind industry and build wind towers. I'm certified to climb to 400 meters in the sky. I've done a lot in my life, but what I was going to write my college disposition and essentially probably turn into my book was a theory of mine that came to me in a very deep spiritual experience with the plant of cannabis, where I got really, really stoned, and I was thinking about, what does this plant mean? Kind of what you asked me earlier. What does it mean? What is cannabis? What does it do? What does it mean? I was asking myself that question, and I had just learned about the endocannabinoid system and how everybody has one. Every animal has cannabinoid receptors in your body. And then I started thinking about how cannabis is agriculturally treated pre-criminalization and post-criminalization. And I thought about it for a second, and I realized, okay, in the 30s, as a way to deport Mexicans, which why I call it cannabis, not marijuana. Marijuana is a racist term they used to make it sound more Latin so that they could deport Mexicans. If you guys don't believe me, look that up. But in the 30s, when they made it illegal, that did something. And what it did was this. It removed cannabis from our food system. Most of our crops are fed to our animals. One of the reasons I'm vegan. I eat all my food firsthand. Most people eat a large majority of meat, meaning that their food is recycled. So it takes 8 times the amount of grain and fresh vegetables to feed the cow that you then turn into a steak to eat than it would be for you to just eat the fresh vegetables and the grains. During that food production of getting 8 times the amount of food it would require to feed a human, to grow an animal to then kill and feed that human, which we're talking millions of people, so we're talking a lot of shit that they're growing. It used to include hemp. George Washington grew hemp.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Jefferson grew hemp. This entire country used to be covered in fucking hemp. Mm-hmm. Now it's soybeans, corn, a bunch of shit that we can't even digest, or it's terrible for our bodies, terrible for the animals. Monocropping, which is destroying the soils, right? But it used to be hemp, a lot of it, millions and millions of acres of it. And what were they doing with it? They're feeding it to the animals. So what's happening? The animals are ingesting THC and CBDs and Delta-8 and Delta-9 and all of the other endocannabinoids, or all the other cannabinoids that interact with their endocannabinoid system. Then we slaughter those animals and eat them. So even if you weren't smoking cannabis, you were ingesting cannabinoids, meaning that a majority of the population of humans and animals on this landmass and other land masses in India and China and everywhere else were intaking cannabinoids. Mm-hmm. In the 30s, that stopped. What also started happening in the 30s? Crime rates started going up, cancer going up, autism going up. All these diseases, all these health issues, all these problems have progressively gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's like, okay, things like that happen. That's how evolution works. That's how bacteria growth works. That's how diseases manifest. It's always happened. But the rate at which it has happened in the last 100 years is like 10 times what it was before. Why? I'm thoroughly convinced that it's because we don't have cannabis in our blood anymore. And that was going to be my thesis. And every person that I've ever told this to, including cannabis researchers, are like, yeah, you're absolutely right. They're like, that's essentially the untalked about factor, is that even people who don't smoke can benefit from having cannabis inside of them. Mm-hmm. And so you having an endocannabinoid system that is essentially reliant entirely on itself to produce cannabinoids inside your brain and your bloodstream for your body to do the things like regulating itself. If you don't have any intake at all, you're doing all that on your own, so you're struggling, which is where mental illness comes into play and health issues come into play and, growths and all these different things. I'm thoroughly convinced that cannabis is a medicine of that level, that if we were to reintroduce it into the human diet or into the water supply or into whatever, we could literally cure cancer. And I talk about that in the album because it's proven. They've taken cancer cells and applied cannabinoids to it, and it will kill cancer cells. Now, of course, that research is snuffed and oppressed and pushed back because of legalization issues and whatever else, which is one of the biggest benefits to legalization. I think if we legalize, the biggest reason I'm pro-legalization, even though it comes with all its issues still, is because it will open up the scientific community to be able to do medical research. And that's really what we need. So, but yeah, I think it's all intrinsically linked. I think that's why Washington is so progressive, and that's why we have a lot of the resources and benefits that we do, which still fail. I mean, look at society here compared to everywhere else. Yes, it's better, but we still have, like I was talking earlier, they're sweeping the park right now. There's homelessness everywhere, and there's empty buildings everywhere else. We have a huge problem. But I think cannabis can be a huge a benefactor to helping with a lot of those problems, and it's just ignored or it's demonized.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dabbing with Washington Artists. Please be sure to give us a like and follow for more content.
And check below for links to the artists and their most current projects.
And remember, with your support, local art thrives.